Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you might be around the world. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, Procurement and Supply Chain in Agile Transformations. My name's Eric Naiburg, and I'm joined by Simon Reindl and Mirko Kleiner today. And we're going to take you through some discussions, some Q&A, and hopefully lots of different information that'll help you do better. And as we often see, even when we're trying to transform how we work, quite often that procurement is still done in more old-fashioned ways. And we've got some ideas that we'll talk about today to help on that. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. Your microphones are muted, but please ask us questions. You'll see a Q&A button down on your screen. Use that Q&A to ask questions, and we'll answer them as best we can throughout the session, and certainly we'll have time at the end as well. And this will be recorded, so if you can't make it or you want to share it, make the whole thing, or you want to share it with others, it will be up on the website within the next 24 hours. Next slide. So real quick, if you're new to this series or new to Scrum.org, the Scrum.org is a mission-based organization focused on helping people and teams solve complex problems. We're founded by Ken Schwaber. Ken is the co-creator of Scrum. He's our chairman and founder and continues to help drive both our organization as well as Scrum out there in the world. And we do that via training, certification, and ongoing learning, much like this series today. With that, I'll let our folks introduce themselves, and we'll get started. Simon?
Hi, everyone. My name's Simon Reindl. I'm a professional Scrum trainer. I've also at Mirko's been working with Mirko on Lean Agile procurement since 2019. I'm now working with the LAP Alliance as a board member and looking forward to this discussion today. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks, Eric. Nice to be here. My name is Mirko Kleiner. I'm heading up the Lean Agile Procurement Alliance, and we are in a collaboration with Scrum.org and many other Agile, supply chain, procurement, even legal alliances. And thanks to Eric and his team, they also helped distribute our study, our survey, and today it's a big pleasure to talk about not only about the results, because if we just had a little chat beforehand, if we just talk about the numbers, it's boring and we're going to lose you. Now we're going to add a lot of stories and our observations, personal opinions, and I'm very excited to be here today with you because this year's topic of our study, of our global annual study, was Agile transformation across companies. I think that's a topic that is not yet seen out there, or at least not very common. And I hope you get inspired by that. So let me just kick it off. So Agile across companies, really? What's that? So let me just share two examples here. So there are companies out there, and you might have heard of Hire. It's a white good company, a Chinese world leader IoT company that has pulled down all their hierarchy and they're operating more than 80,000 employees in so-called 4,000 micro enterprises. Now, what is that? From an Agile perspective, it's a team of teams organization. And 2 years ago, they pulled down their company walls, if you like, and now those team of teams are even collaborating very closely with their external partners. Because as you can imagine, producing, supplying, selling, everything is needed, right? So the whole supply chain. And they are, in my opinion, the most disruptive organization, the most adaptive organization on the planet. And at the same time, they're also one of the most successful company on the planet because they have almost no bureaucracy anymore. Another example, there is, yeah, that's kind of the dream of us agile coaches. Yeah, that's the should state. All the companies should look like that, but it's not often doesn't often not always make sense because not always things are complex, and so it could also be just project based. And the second example here is the joint development of the COVID-19 vaccine. I think a lot of you might not know that this was a joint development of three major companies, Pfizer, BioNTech, and Fosun, and none of them was capable to do the job alone. And none of them knew at the beginning if that they will be successful. And we had the pleasure to have Ugur Sain speaking on the World Agility Forum in our stream with the LAP Alliance. And what he said is, well, basically, we just started like a startup. And now this is like a huge shock for all the commercial people out there because we need first to negotiate. We have IP, they have IT, we have assets, they have assets. There might be profits, there might be multi-million-dollar investments to be taken. And they said, well, there's no time for all that. So they really just agreed on a general governance and high-level cost and potential profit sharing. And as they went along, it turned out that they're going to be successful. They improve. They then, in parallel, negotiated the contractual details. So this would have been possible if they would have acted as one organism, as one collaborative organization across companies. So, yeah, it's my pleasure to
jump in there, Mirko.
Go ahead, Simon.
Just really want to call out that for that to be effective, there's trust at an individual and organizational level. Like the amount of trust needed from each of the organizations in the people to do it, and then between each other, that no one's going to try and take undue advantage of another organization. No one's going to try and hurt each other. So that's super critical. And if we think about agility, that's the essence of empiricism. Like we cannot get empiricism without trust. And so we're seeing this happening across organizations. And this ecosystem this is the big thing that came out of the report to me. Ecosystems is where we're heading.
Exactly. So we will dive into it, and the numbers will help to guide our discussion a little bit. So this is just a summary. We have a global coverage of our studies, different industries, different sizes of organizations, different levels of agile maturity. And as you can see,
if you just go back about one slide, is a number of this I think it's really worthwhile calling out. And there's a big number there. The organizations that are less than $1 billion has increased by over 9%, 10%. So it went from 49% to 57% between this year, this report and the previous report, which means that there's a lot more organizations at the smaller scale really engaging in this. So I just thought that was a really big headline out of this report.
Right. So what is interesting to me, we are asking that on an annual base, but the business agility keeps being of strategic importance to even the commercial side of the businesses and the leadership. If you think of a guy of people in procurement, in sales, supply chain management, you might think their main reason is reducing risk or reducing costs. But our report shows quite nicely that it's similar challenges or reasons they're looking for to overcome, as we know from the standard State of Agility report. So being faster, overcome complexity, dealing with changing priorities. So what is interesting here, we also ask, what is your maturity level of your agile transformation? And this was asked to commercial people. And so some of them have maybe reported it on a team level, others might have reported it on a department level, others for the company. But we were, I think, one of the first organization who started to ask, do you include your strategic partners into your agile transformation? And it's no wonder just a few, but they are cases. So I'm wondering, Eric, Simon, are you involved or do you know cases or clients that are including their strategic partners on their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And most organizations, as they're trying to transform, as they're trying to do their work, it's not one organization, right? They leverage their partners. They have to bring in their collaborators, whether it's subcontractors, whether it's other things. We were working with a consumer packaged organization, for example. So no software in this particular instance. They have to leverage a lot of vendors, right? They've got producers of raw materials. They've got outsourcing of parts of manufacturing and packaging and the like. And they've transformed how they build their products, and these are hard products, in a way that they're agile. So they're able to test them. They're able to work around the world and globally distribute them as well. And for them to be successful, their partners have to be part of that mix. They have to be part of what they're doing, because without that, they might be working in an agile way in this little team here, but then everything else stops and slows down.
Yeah.
Simon?
Yeah, I got three different examples of this. The first one is your classic IT company, and they're working with partners, so that they have multiple partners working together. And it's been critical that all of them embraced the agile principles so that they could be honored collectively, right? Because if one partner did not embrace the principles, the whole thing's going to fall apart. And then the second and third example are very similar, different sectors, petrochemicals and defense. Very different sectors. The similarity is the size of the work needing to be done. Now, if you're working in defense and petrochemical, you have to have multiple partners due to some of the extreme specialization, multiple vendors, risk, global reach, etc. If you do not work with your partners to lift their agility understanding, it's going to hold the, shall we call it, the company back. Whoever wants to lead it, if somebody wants to lead it, they can't be agile if somebody else doesn't want to.
Mm.
So I think it's
so maybe just to add on that a little bit, how are we collaborating traditionally with our suppliers? Because maybe some of the folks that are joining us today or will watch the recording don't know, right? Traditionally, the buyer side specifies thing, throw it over the bench to the supplier and hopes then that they understand it and that they supply whatever was demanded. But there's almost zero to nothing collaboration in between. And as at the, as 20 years ago in software, it was similar challenges. We faced similar challenges, but now this is like one level upwards. So we need to look at the whole value creation or the whole value supply chain, whatever you want to call it. So to me, being an agile coach and consultant myself, I started to ask one of my first questions if I'm engaged in an agile transformation, who are your strategic partners in this, and why are they not sitting at the table? So for all the external consultants, that one question increases your engagement, doubles, triples, whatsoever, right? So it's commercially maybe interesting. So we have asked the commercial people in procurement, account management, supply chain, what techniques do you know, right? Agile, what agile practices have you applied? And so what this says is we are still at the very beginning. So it's just basic practices. We do have more domain-specific practices like lean agile procurement applied, but it's not yet, majority that applies it. And no wonder Kanban Scrum has been applied or testified. But from our understanding, it's not yet. I mean, with every client that we work, there is still a lot to do.
I think one of the
So
really
it's
important things here, though, Mirko,
Mhm.
is that second one, right? Empowered cross-functional teams, and the fact that what they're doing, we could take everything else off the table here. If they're empowering the people closest to the work to do the work, and making sure the people closest to the work have all of the capabilities to get that work done, that's a huge stride, right? That's a huge opportunity to get things done in a better way, and in a way, and that's very different than historical, right? Historically, it was, command and control. We're going to tell you how to work. We're gonna
Yeah.
do that, and then it even ties back to what we just talked about with the partners. Now, if I can start to get partners as part of that cross-functional team, where it makes sense. It doesn't always make sense if I'm just supplying parts, but if it makes sense to have those partners in, now we really start to get more successful. I'm currently working on a project, and this is a software-based project where when we went out and to find this third-party partner, one of our requirements, of course, was you use agile techniques in Scrum. And it was hard, one, to find such a partner, because most contracts were still time and materials and the like, and we were able to work through them. And they have developers from that partner are part of our Scrum team and part of the team doing the work. And all the way to the point now that they've seen such benefit out of it that they're starting to recommend this to their new clients. It's a way to work and working as a team versus throw it over the wall and then throw it back over the wall and not, originally they said, well, we've done this a million times. We know how to do it. It's like, well, but is it always the same? Well, no, we always run into this and that and the exactly. So how about instead of saying, here's how we're going to do the whole thing, let's buy a few sprints and then we'll buy some more sprints and let's work together on what the priorities are. Now, there are some things that maybe have to get done, set up or whatever, but in general, let's prioritize things as we go. And what excites me about this slide and this graph is exactly that. Empowering the teams in having them be cross-functional, that's a huge step in getting there.
It is.
Can I just jump in there? And one of the keys of saying it's a truly cross-functional team is we might need somebody from procurement or legal or finance in our team. Because if we're procuring parts or if we're setting up the arrangement, if we use a cross-functional team to establish the arrangement, then we're truly being cross-functional. And that shortens the time. And that means that we're going to avoid the silo and the handoff, because I've seen it so many times where an organization, a team within an organization needs support from someone else, and they have to go through the procurement team, and then there's a handoff and a delay, and then you have the whole RFC, RFI, response to tender qualification. We're talking months. I've seen sometimes you could have a kid faster than you could actually start working with another partner. Now, that's good for world population, not really good for innovation. So if we can have that empowered cross-functional team, we can go from idea to doing that first sprint on a trust basis within a month. And that'll save us cost of delay at least $250,000.
Yeah. The fastest case we had was 1 hour from idea till a new team and partner, but that's another story. I just want to add here what Eric said. Two things. If we think about, I assume we have Scrum Masters, team members, etc. in the call in our webinar. So if you think about it, who should own the relationship with our partner? Is it us as a Scrum team, or is it somebody else in procurement and so forth? Well, it's not defined in the Scrum Guide. That's the good news. But I have a strong opinion on that it should be if the Scrum team owns the product, whatever the product is, this is part of the product, right? So let's jump on our next topic, because this all working across agile across companies is the most complex thing, right? There is cash out involved, there is legal, there is compliance, and so on and so on. So unfortunately, we need to talk about contracts. And I just have very basic slides here to explain it, so don't be scared. Traditionally, the contract is we specify what we want, and then hopefully we get exactly what we have specified and contracted, and it's a clear line that separates us from the supplier. So if something goes wrong, we know exactly it was their fault, we can sue them, we can charge them whatsoever. Now that's good if it's just a consumer good or something simple. But if it's complex, we need to pull down this wall, not just the legal wall, and set the foundation that supports and allows agile collaboration across companies. That's the big difference. And that's scary. It's super scary, because now who owns the co-created work? Who is guilty if something gets wrong? What about warranty? There are so many legal topics. We don't go into that today, but we need to figure all that out, right? How do we deal with that? We invest, they invest, maybe like in the Pfizer case. We need to arrange all that in a working agreement, in a governance, in a contracting. So we asked the respondents of our study, how used are you to agile contracts? And first of all, we asked them, do you get better business outcomes? And all of them agreed, at least neutral to strongly agree. So it's definitely better than what we have today. On the other hand, this graph on the other side shows a little bit they're lost. Lawyers, they're at the end of the process, and I think there is also very much to do from the Agile community to bring them up to speed. I was a few weeks ago giving a keynote on a commercial Alliance World CC conference. So we had a lot of lawyers there, and I asked the questions: who of you gets more and more requests from the business, from your suppliers, to that you set up an agile contract that supports agile collaboration? And 1 year ago, there would have been almost nobody, and this year it was up to 80% raised their hands. So something is going on even in the legal community, and we need to help them, right? Because time material is not the solution. It's one way, but not the way. I don't know if you want to comment on that. We have more slides on agile contracts.
I think that really aligns with what I've seen as well, Mirko, where it's, let's look at value being delivered and not time and materials, and and give us the flexibility to change. Right. I think what often I've seen, and this kind of comes across here, is you get stuck in, well, the SOW says this. right? The statement of work says this, and it's like, well, I don't know what we're going to deliver. I know what our product goal is. Our goal is to be able to deliver X of a of some sort, right? Well, how we get there and what we do, hopefully we're learning along the way. And if we build our templates and the lawyers are thinking so far into, you know, you know, this is how you do it, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do it, we lose the ability to be able to be agile. We lose the ability to be able to learn as we go. And it's hard to wrap our heads around it, right? Because contractually, well, wait, what happens if they don't deliver what we wanted? And if we don't tell them what we want and how to deliver it, then how do we hold them accountable for, well, let's have a product goal and let's meet, right? Let's have that communication open. And that's where I've seen it really successful is they are a part of that Scrum team, the partner
Exactly.
is. And we are working and delivering together in order to deliver in the end.
There's
Exactly.
a few wonderful things, right? If you approach it in this way, first of all, it requires the company asking for something to be really clear about what they're asking for. Where I've seen some instances where they're like, we need some help, but we're not sure what with, can you do it? And of course, most suppliers are going to go, sure, we can, just give us your money. We'll get you there. The second thing is it encourages more collaborative behavior, because if we don't have an agile contract, if we revert to the traditional kind of contract, there's a lot of money that gets locked up into the milestones or the phases of delivery. And I've seen a very large project nearly fail because the supply nearly went broke because they needed funding. And they'd been with the company for a while, and they were not going to get paid until the requirements had been signed off. Now, if we're working in a truly agile way, we know there's going to be a backlog. We know it will emerge. We know it's change. We know there'll be adaptation. So how do we square that circle? And this is why we need an agile contract approach. And third anti-pattern that this resolves by agreeing to approach it in the right way, it stops the bait and switch where potential suppliers will offer a very low price and basically screw the company on change control and say it's not a bug, it's a change request that's going to cost you 100K per change request, that's contractual. And I've spoken to people who've worked with suppliers where their bonus was based on asserting change requests. So by approaching it and looking for the collaboration from the outset, it's going to create a better situation because we're talking about it up front.
We've got a great question that's come in that's kind of tied to all of this. So I think we can probably take this now. With such a combined supplier buyer cross-functional teams, that implies to have one company cover some specific expertise or capability in the ecosystem in order to allow collaboration and avoid competition within the Scrum team. So I think what's being asked here is how do we bring companies together from multiple suppliers? If I'm reading between some of the lines that were written here, how do we avoid that? You've got competitors maybe sitting on the same Scrum team in some cases, and how do you bring that all together, guys?
Well, I can start. So we have developed Lean Agile Procurement just for that, right? So traditionally, you get a request for proposal, a document, and then you just send back your proposal. So there's almost no collaboration, maybe between the procurement and the sales guy. But the people that will do actually the job often are not involved, or maybe just the senior architect whatsoever if it's software. And with Lean Agile Procurement, we asked for co-creation of the proposal together with multiple shortlisted suppliers in one room. And so why is that? First of all, we want to create this alignment across the potential partners. If it's complex, we sometimes don't know if one can cover it all. So it often happens that then we have we have multiple partners or solutions that fit could do the job even better. But beside the so-called business fit, we're also assessing the culture and social fit, right? So between us on the buyer side and each of the suppliers, but also across the suppliers. I'll give you an example. In Australia, we had recently a case where, that was actually construction, how weird is that? We had 10 suppliers in one room, and we asked them, we're gonna award 2 or more based on this objective, and find out who your allies are. How cool is that? And obviously they knew each other from the market, and they will, not just based on the price and competence and services, but also based on the personal relationship, they will partner up or not.
One of the things that I've seen work quite well, and this is actually goes back to old-fashioned contracts, but I think it applies here. In the term might be more of a government thing, but it works where we have more of a prime contractor, where the prime so that everybody's working together. So there's not 10 different contracts with 10 different vendors, but we have a prime who kind of drives that as it's the owner of the contract, and then they bring in the suppliers within them. And I've seen that help quite well and help drive a lot of that. And the other thing to remember is the Scrum team can evolve over time. So I may need certain skills on my team for this sprint or these 2 sprints to achieve this sprint goal. Well, those skills maybe aren't needed for that next sprint. Well, they can move off of the Scrum team until we need them again. So it can be somewhat fluid. It doesn't have to be the team is the team and the team is the team forever.
Yeah. So what you just mentioned, contractual wise, we have this one single point of contact, and they are subcontracting with everybody else. It's nothing wrong about it. There was just a huge scandal in Canada where the one sub supplier, tier 4 or whatsoever, that then basically did the job actually, was just getting a portion of the whole spend. So there was a lot of corruption in between. So what we are seeing also, Simon was picking up the word ecosystem, is more and more mutual contracts. So if you have multiple parties, or you need multiple parties, you put the objectives in, and the purpose, the mission, everything in the center of gravity, and then agree on, how are we going to collaborate as a whole? How are we going to achieve that? So that is then not just the Scrum team. Often it's a team of teams setting. I would like to continue here. We have a few more slides here, and here we go. Just coincidentally, so what is an adaptive partner ecosystem? Well, let me just come back to the higher case. I don't want to explain it in too much detail, but what they have, just imagine this is a Scrum team, and you're responsible for your product is a refrigerator with IoT services, it's interconnected and so forth. So, and as a whole, you are unable to design, program, produce, supply, sell everything, right? So the whole product life cycle, you're unable, that's too much for one Scrum team. So those teams need to partner up with other teams, and they build together an ecosystem that makes that work. And what is fascinating with Hire, they have really gone that far. Even if that used to be just internal, now they have opened it up to collaborate with third party. They have a mutual contract, it's actually a smart contract, in the center of gravity, and they are updating that every other month. So it's kind of like a 1 month sprint, or we might have sprints towards this product goal or bigger product goal of this month. And what is interesting about it, they're fully empowered, so it's no more just a cross-functional team that's empowered, it's the whole partner ecosystem is empowered to take financial decisions, to supply, to sell, to whatever is needed. And so cross-functional becomes cross-company, right? Same principle, but just one level of abstraction higher.
Can I highlight something you mentioned there, Mirko? For that to work, sure, they're updating their contract frequently. And this is a really important point. Most of the time, I think there's the vast majority of contracts, I call them WARN contracts, WORN, which is write once, read never. And you write the contract and you only refer to the contract when it becomes a legal dispute. Whereas the contract now is a living artifact, and it's light and it's adaptive, and we update it because we're working in a complex world. So it's got to update.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. So we have the evidence from the study. So 98% of the respondents said we are not updating an initial contract, or maximum every 6 months. And whatever updating means. And just to clarify, what means a contract? So that's also a big confusion in the Agile community, what I'm observing. We're not just talking about a statement of work. It's a whole contractual framework that needs to follow Agile values and principles. So think about your last NDA that you have signed. It's maybe not compliant with Agile values, right? Because all the risks have been pushed to you. There is a master service agreement. There might be a service level agreement, and so on and so on. So everything, the whole package. What is also interesting is, I mean, not a big surprise that the respondents reported that still the contracting strategy is one contract for a partner. But what was a little bit of a surprise is this collective contract or mutual contract seems to be quite common already. So it's not a completely new thing. And there are even crazy companies out there that really work based on trust, verbal agreement, which is a contract as well by law. So we skipped one slide here. As we started in our last year's survey to ask about partner ecosystems, so like scaling Agile across companies, we were wondering in which sectors, in which part of a product life cycle, if you will, this is common. And I personally thought it's mainly innovation or something, but it seems to be quite across the whole product life cycle here, right? So really in production, in go-to-market, sales and marketing, and so on and so on. And if you think about hire, maybe you haven't heard, or it's the first time that you've heard of hire today. Hire has been hyped in the business development and senior leadership community in the last few years as a leading North Star how to organize and doing business. No wonder, because of their success. Any surprises for you guys, Simon and Eric, in these numbers?
Can I just call out the quote from Hire's chairman, and it's in the report. So have a look in the report, and there's a great photo of him. His name's Zhang Rumin, and his statement is, maximizing shareholder value is a zero-sum game. We don't want to create a walled garden. We want to create a rainforest. Now, I grew up in tropical Queensland, and with rainforests, it's all it's pretty hard to tell where one plant stops and the next one starts. And it is truly an ecosystem. And I think in this very complex world, having that adaptation available by having a network of partners, it gives you resilience, it gives you strength. Now, for that to work, you're going to need to find the right kind of partners. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to work with everyone, because there's a plant in the Australian rainforest up north. It's called wait a while. And the reason it's called wait a while is if you walk into it, you're going to be waiting a while because it's got 2-inch thorns on it. So, Australian obvious naming convention. There's a reason that plant exists, but just be careful that you don't get into that kind of partnership, right? So this is where I think there might be some interest about it. There's a link we'll share about the Lean Agile Procurement Canvas, and that is in itself a contract. Like if you can complete the Lean Agile Procurement Canvas and you put a note on each of the rectangles within it, you can sign it, and it's been tested under law. It's a contract. It's got everything you need. It's a great artifact.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. So there are a few more numbers, and we obviously are interested because with Lean Agile Procurement, we are pushing the boundaries of procurement. Complex sourcing cases in our days with traditional approaches take up to 6 to 12 months just in procurement. It's insane. I've been involved in cases, not just in public sector, that have taken years. So if you think about it, you have specified something, and procurement takes months or years, you're basically getting something old, based on old ideas, based on old specifications. And so we were also wondering here, how fast can you set up a new partner ecosystem? And it's not a surprise that this is because it's the most complex thing. It's basically in our today's terms, we are setting up a supply chain, right? But just with new variables based on new values and principles. And so this takes a lot of time. I was involved, last week, I can't unfortunately say the company's name yet, but we have set up a partner ecosystem with different verticals in sales and delivery, together with a huge hardware production company, a global leader, and the startup was driving all that ecosystem in just one day. So it's possible. Don't tell me it's not possible. It's possible. And then on the right hand side, it's no surprise what are the biggest challenges. I mean, it was mentioned, the base of everything is trust. Now, I'm a strong believer that you don't have just trust. You need to develop it. And so we need to create situations where we can get in touch, where we can build and develop trust, and even before we get married, before we sign a business contract.
And I think this is a big one because we're talking about agile adoption, agile growth. This is really important within your organization. So if you're having trust issues between teams and departments within your organization, that is probably an indicator you're going to struggle to have good relationships with other companies because you haven't even figured out how to trust people in your own company. And so it's really, really important that we as Scrum Masters, product owners, Agile coaches, that we go out and promote trust and transparency within our organization so that we can build stronger connections outside our organization.
Absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. So let's talk about Agile transformation. So this is just a summary, that you all might be familiar of. So it's not about changing the line organization. I mean, there are some good legal reasons for it, But what we want to do is we want to shift the focus, the time that we spend to value creation. Now, this is just a simplified graph of a fully agile company consisting of teams. Now, we are taking that to the next level, right? So how can we collaborate with these business cases across companies, and what does that mean to the organization? So we have asked all the participants, what are you doing right now? What are some joint activities? And as you can see, this is really at the very beginning. So we're sharing knowledge. We do some joint education, training. Something that we might have done in the past, in the times of lean, we are also coaching our suppliers. So don't think about that. But it's very rare still that we have, a joint roadmap or even a joint strategy across companies, how an agile transformation, how we can set up for success together. And the other thing is, where do we apply an agile transformation across companies? That's no wonder either, It sometimes even makes no sense. That's my interpretation, that we just boil the ocean and we just transform that we are transformed. So it should be focused on a business case level or department level, whatever you call it. Majority is still doing some experiments on a team project level, which makes a lot of sense. But as in the early days of Agile, we're still missing a lot, the C-level support in that. And it's our task as Agile coaches, Scrum Master, product owners to ask for it. Yeah, and in the perfect world, we would have a joint scope across companies, right? A joint roadmap and so forth. And that was exactly what we have in this case that I mentioned last week. We have not just set up a mutual agreement across parties, we also have set up a minimum viable governance on a strategic level, on a product development level, and then on an operational level if it comes to sales and product delivery. The best we can measure what is really done is asking for the money. And obviously, just a very few do co-invest into a joint budget for an agile transformation across companies. You don't have to. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's just a good indicator to measure how serious do we take it.
And how much trust?
How much trust you also might have, yes. Yeah, exactly. Then the benefits, they're quite standard, I would say. It doesn't matter if we are doing agile transformation on the commercial side of a company or in delivery, and so are the challenges, right? So what was no surprise to us is commercial rules, not just procurement, account management, finance, sales, haven't been on the spotlight yet in the Agile community. I think that's a new opportunity as the rest of the market is going down or is saturated. What I would like to add here, that was a big surprise as I found out that 2-3 years ago, up to 80% of a company's revenue is in the hands of commercial people. today, depending on the industry. Now, if a company is struggling, and today, everybody is in one way or the other struggling, inflation, war, supply chain disruptions, changing market demands, whatsoever. Here we could have a direct impact on a company's success. And in the public sector, it's even worse. It's up to, according to the World Trade Organization, it's up to 15% of the GDP of a country. So for America, I'm not aware of the GDP, but that means billions, right?
Yeah. And if I can just call to action this, like what can we do? Like it's a common thing. Like what can you do? If you're a Scrum Master, a product owner, Agile coach, consultant, get a hold of the Lean Agile Procurement Canvas. It's downloadable from the LAP Alliance. Mirko, I think, does, like, it was Mirko who taught me the trick, is like when I'm talking to clients, I use the LAP Canvas to actually establish the engagement. So drink our own champagne. And so by using the canvas to guide the engagement, we're demonstrating the flexibility and the workability of it. You might want to start small and just get it between one team and another within your organization. You might need to want to do it at department or divisional level before you go outside your organization. Think of it like, for some of you on the call, may be long enough in the tooth to remember the early days of Scrum. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were only teams here and there that were doing it. So how did it get to such a phenomenon? Because people tried, they did experiments, and they shared their success. If the more we can do that, the more trust and belief we'll have in this. And it came from when a mate of mine, Andy Spence, was talking with governance people. They loved it. They lapped it up because they were engaged. Go and talk to your commercial people. Go and talk to finance. Go and talk to legal. Understand their challenges and how you could share with them some agile practices and techniques that's going to make the pain go away. You want to, that helps you as a Scrum Master really deliver organizational change. Like, step up to the plate. Now's not the time to shy away.
Yeah.
So tied to that,
go ahead.
So tied to that, I think we've got some questions coming in that I think we have a little bit of time to answer. So I'd like to hit on some of those. And this first one's kind of tied to some of this discussion we all were just having. How do you suggest getting finance and legal to even really understand that agile contracts are safe and sensible? Generally, they're not even thinking that way and don't have much experience.
Yeah, I can start with that. I explained that based on an example. Was in New Zealand last year, meeting a lot of companies and CPOs, not chief product officers, chief procurement officers. And every time I spent time with them, I said, I want to meet you and your leadership team, but please bring also representatives from your agile practice. And I inspired them, not telling them you have to, but I inspired them with some cases and said, look, that is what's possible. And after 20 minutes, the CPO looked at the agile guys and his leadership team and said, what are we waiting for? So exactly right what Simon said, start a conversation. Of course, they don't speak your language. They don't understand agile, but you don't understand them, right? So let's get the conversation started and let's figure out what, not just challenges, but what problems can we help them solve. So to me, it's not about agile. It has never been about agile. It has been always been about solving problems. And then it's up to them, right? Do you want to do it the way we have done it the past 50 years? You know the results, or you want to try something new, a new medicine, right? And we might be faster, better, happier.
I
So it's, yeah.
Yeah, to echo that of Mirko, just go and have the conversation. They might want to understand what some of these mystical words we use are, like Scrum and Kanban, and why do we stand up, or why do we have a call every day? Like, geez, don't we need to get some work done? So if you can explain Scrum and Kanban in 5 minutes apiece, and then ask them what their biggest pain is, and what's the smallest experiment that could take some of that pain away, you probably opened a big door there.
And I think it gets to the why, not the what, and which actually leads me to this next question that came in. And Simon, I mean, this is one. This has, at the end of the day, is not even related to contracts. I think this is what you, as an agile coach, and Mirko as an agile coach, struggle with every day. Why do some companies prefer to just fall back to waterfall or traditional ways of working when they struggle to adapt an agile mindset? Do they need a culture change or an evolving mindset? And then where it goes, and this question goes, is um, how do we make the customer understand that only implementing the Scrum specific terms doesn't mean that we're working in a different way?
Right.
And I think, to me, that this is, there's the fact, in something we talk about quite a bit, which is mechanical Scrum. Just because we're doing a daily Scrum, just because we're having a retrospective, if we're just going through the motions, we actually ran a campaign at Scrum.org, I guess about a year or so ago, about I'm not a robot, I practice professional Scrum. Right. I can do all of those things and have no agility whatsoever if I just follow the framework of any framework. It doesn't have to be Scrum, any agile framework, and I don't actually live and breathe it. I have to follow the values. We have to think about the why, not the what. And I think that's the important part of getting folks into those discussions and into those meetings, to understand, well, why are we looking at the meeting daily? Well, because we're looking at the goal, and are we able to achieve the goal, and what adjustments do we make and need to make? Having them think about the empirical evidence to change on the fly. We don't know everything up front, and really changing in building in that mindset shift. If we don't do that, we might as well just do waterfall.
But you nailed it. It's without the values, right? Without some core values that build trust and then enable empiricism, transparency, inspection, adaptation, we may as well whistle Dixie. And one of my favorite movies of all time, The Princess Bride, there's a wonderful quote from this. And people use all this agile vocabulary everywhere, and it's killed agile. And it's when Inigo Montoya turns around and goes, "You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it does." As people are talking about their 2-hour daily stand-ups and their 6-week sprints and stuff. It's like, we need to help people understand value, connect them to the value, and desire change. Now, why do people go back? I would suggest they never went forward. All that you do is actually stripping away badly used language. And so they haven't really changed because they're not interested in transparency.
I do have, I would like to add 2 examples here. One is, I recently supported a German big company in sourcing an ERP system in 2 days. Again. Therefore, I mean, 2 days is a little bit of marketing. The whole lead time was 4 weeks, but still, this is kind of a new world record. It usually takes 6 to 12 months. And obviously, to make this work, we set up a cross-functional team internally. It was led by the CFO, because he said, I know exactly where we are heading. And we implemented Scrum, the most effective way to work cross-functional. And we achieved the unthinkable in 4 weeks, 2 days together with the shortlisted vendors. And afterwards, he made a compliment I never will forget. He said, look, we are on an agile adoption since many years as a company, but now I've got it. It's about delivery. It's about delivering value faster, better outcomes, and so on. The second example
Oh,
is,
real quick, Mirko, I apologize, but I want to be conscious of our time box.
oh yeah,
I know folks have, other things that they have to get to and so on. I want to thank you both for taking part today. Thank you, the audience, for joining. I know there are a few questions or some questions we didn't get to and didn't have a chance to get to. We'll answer those via email. I think we've got your contact information and Mirko and Simon, and we'll get to those questions offline. With that, thank you all again. Thank you for taking the time. Sorry to cut you off, Mirko. But the folks are starting to drop and so on. So thanks everybody and have a great safe rest of your day.